Hi, this is Elena Fouché, and I am going to present to you my Women's Guild Permaculture Design project. So let's dive right in. Except it'd be good to start at the right page. Here we go. So this project, I've called it the Fresneuse Overlay. Fresneuse is a little village in France where I will be presenting this design for. It's actually the site of my in-laws. And we'll get into why that is. It's in Yvelines, France. I'm the designer. Kel Delorax is my mentor, and this is my presentation. So a little bit about me. This is a picture of me in Portugal not too long ago, December 2022. And essentially, with all the things that have been happening recently in the past couple of years, my husband and I's dream of owning our own property and having a garden space where we can produce enough fruit and vegetables to feed ourselves and also share with our community and just basically have some food sovereignty, produce that for ourselves. With all the things that have been happening lately, that dream really became important to us. So we actually let go of our rental home in France, where we moved into in 2018, and right before all this happened. And we let go of our rental property, we bought a van, and we're nomadic for the next 2 to 5 years to learn things like permaculture, gardening, regenerative farming in particular, pasture rotation, different things like that. I'm really interested in horses, so we're thinking about that. It's really to learn skills so that we can be more responsible for our own food and energy usage. And so a big part of that was taking a permaculture design course. And that's what this presentation is about. So here we go. So first, let me set a little bit of a frame here. Because we don't have our own home at the moment, I happened to be at my in-laws, as I mentioned earlier, when I did this design. It was over Christmas, and which is why we were there. And so I designed this site, which is of course not mine, it is my in-laws. And I put on my imagination hat, which we're going to do for this design. And I imagined that my husband and I had bought this site and what would we do with it? And so that was really fun because, I've been to this site every year, every Christmas for the past probably 11 years. And I go sometimes in the summer as well. So I know it enough that I can have some insights about it. And yet it's still pretty new to me. I haven't been there, at all over an entire year, like through all 4 seasons. And there's a lot about that I don't know about the site. And also, as Kelda pointed out, any site has emotional context. And this one had the emotional context of, it's really not my home. It's not mine to design, it's someone else's. So that was also kind of fun to play with, sort of the emotional aspects of it. So, I put on my imagination hat and you can put on yours, and we're going to imagine that my design thesis for this particular site is to create responsible sovereignty. So to have taking care of my physical and my social needs in a regenerative and respectful way, regenerative and respectful of self, the community, humanity, and Gaia. And my vision for this site is to slowly transform this site into, with some gardens. They have really small gardens, and I really wanted a bigger garden, not huge, just big enough so that we could produce our own fruits and vegetables. And I wanted to get to 80% of our own food sovereignty, producing 80% of our own fruits and vegetables within 3 years. Or 5 years, and I wanted 95% local sovereignty, so food interdependence with the local community, so that basically I'm buying 95% of our foods, including meat products, oils, everything that we're going to eat, and including things we're not going to ever produce ourselves, like oils and things like that. I wanted to do that locally. And I wanted to do 95% of our food sourcing locally within the first 2 years. And this is a farming area, it's a farming region. It's about 40 kilometers outside of Paris. So it's rural, and I'll show you a bit of that later. And so there are a lot of people farming and raising different animals and crops and food stuff around. And of course, France is really into artisanal foods. So there's also cheeses and, dairy products and all different kinds of things around that are being locally produced. So that's a pretty exciting aspect of this particular site. It's totally possible to have 95% local food interdependence. So super fun to think about that. And a big part of this project, I am naturally a networker and I'm a teacher. And so I love connecting people. And so it was really obvious to me to make this a social project as well and think about how can I involve the community. And, as I'm learning and as I'm creating through this site, through creating this site, how can I share that knowledge with other people and how can I invite the community in, large portion of whom are or were farmers, they grew up on farms. How can I invite them in to share their knowledge and share it not only with me, with each other. And so to create a really nice community space on this site for people to come and knowledge share and get to know each other in the context of food sovereignty and ethical usage of energy, water, resources, waste, all this kind of stuff. So it's pretty fun placement. And I really got to understand that more about this site. I really appreciated this site a lot more through designing it. So it's been a really nice way to get to know it and really imagine possibilities through the permaculture design experience. So let's see, anything else I want to say about this? I guess some of the goals I've already mentioned. Ones that I didn't mention are that I really want to install some rain catchment system. It turns out that they actually do funnel all their rainwater into the well that they have. There's a well on site. So that was pretty cool to find out. I didn't know that because it's not obvious. A lot of it's underground. What I do want to do though is take one of the downspouts from the roof, one of the gutters, and put it into a cistern, like a barrel, and put that straight into the garden I'm going to build. So that's pretty fun project to do. I also want to eventually work with their gray water. As far as I know, they're not using their gray water at all. So that could be a really nice thing to do. Again, something I can share with the community as I do it. And of course, I'll need to research regulations and things like that because we are in a village, so a small town, so it doesn't matter. I also want to have fun building my first compost toilet and put that actually in the garden and involve other people in the community, not only the building of it, but also have that in the garden for use when we're doing events in the garden for people to come and knowledge share. And of course, we can make that really nice and aesthetic and clean and nice smelling and all this kind of stuff. And as people use it and interact with it, they can see like, wow, okay, this is actually something that they could do as well on their own sites. So also pretty fun to imagine. And really the last big goal that I haven't talked about, I kind of did. It's just important to me because community and networking is a big deal for me, is to bring people into this site. It's bordered in the back by a walkway. It's actually a little gravel road that people drive down, and also a fair number of people walk and bicycle. And so it's fun to imagine pulling people in through the back gate to do events and having people walk in and just see the different things that I've built and we've all built together and sharing with them. So that's a big goal for this site. Okay. So let's move on to observations, which is, of course, a huge part in permaculture design and formed the largest section of this project. First, I just want you to see where we are. First, we're in France, close to Paris. And then this loop you see in this third map, we're going in a clockwise direction. This third map, we're actually right next to the River Seine, which is really convenient. And if you keep going down the fourth map with the black circle, that's actually where the site is. And if you look to the top of that particular map, you'll see the river there. That is the Seine River. And just to note later on, the whole site slopes downward into that river. So you'll see that later. And this last map there is an aerial photo of the actual site. It's a satellite photo of the actual site. Okay, so here's the base map. You can see the home down here in the bottom. An interesting aspect of this site is that the front yard is the tiny little portion down there in the bottom. Normally we often think of the front yard as like, the big welcoming open space that we want to use. And in this site, it's actually the reverse. The front yard is this tiny little space there here in the bottom of the map. And the backyard is this really big space on the top of the map. And as I said, it slopes down towards the river. So you can imagine the river is like off the page up there. So this is what we're working with. We have a fairly big home. It's a 2-story, 4-bedroom house. This is a 3.3 hectare lot, which is 0.7 acres if you're in the US or anywhere that does acres. So the house is really nice. It's way bigger than we will ever need, which is awesome because that also means we have space to do workshops and we have offices and stuff. We are entrepreneurs and we will keep doing our own work. I'm a teacher, as I said. I teach English and meditation and yoga, and we have room for all of that. My husband is also an entrepreneur, so he needs an office space for when he's at home. He's often off coaching, so tennis, so he needs that space in our house to do that. So the home is really set up and beautiful for that. We also have these tiny little gardens in the front yard. And we'll talk about that a bit later. Why, even though there's like little raised beds in the front, you can see there's little tiny squares in the bottom of the map. They're using those as raised beds, and mostly they use them for herbs. They don't have a lot of vegetables in there. And I realized why later when we do zones and sectors, you'll see. They already have a well, which is great. And they have municipal water, gas, electricity, sewage, those kinds of things already coming in. Okay. We have underground utilities coming in, as I just said, and a well. So sector overview. This was pretty fun. One thing I realized, I've lived in the tropics and semi-tropics a lot for 17 years. So it was really fun. I'd forgotten that like in where we are, this high north, or maybe if you're really far south relative to the tropics, there's an 8-hour difference in sunlight between the two solstices. And so, the arc of the sun is quite different whether you're in the summer and the winter. One beautiful thing about this site, though, is the backyard, which is, again, that huge section right in the top of the map. The most of the site is the backyard. And as it gets sun, once you get off of the terrace, there's a terrace off the backyard. That's the white space there. Once you get off the terrace, it's sunny. The sun does not block the house does not block the sun, so we'll see that a bit later. That influences where I'm going to put the gardens. There is a pretty strong wind presence on this site, so you'll see there's a westerly wind that comes in, and they have already done a really nice tree row to block the wind. There's also a really strong northerly wind coming down, and you can see there's also a windbreak with trees there as well. And if you look, it's a little hard to tell on this map, you'll see it later. There's actually hedgerows blocking like the terrace as well and the side of the house from the north wind. So they've already done quite a bit for windbreaks, which is quite nice. Another huge influence, of course, is the river. The river is 400 yards away. Can't remember how many meters that is, but you can see in the top of the map, there's a flood zone, and it actually does flood that high about every 10, 15 years. So that's something to keep in mind. At first I was thinking, oh, that'd be a great place for a garden. And then I realized, oh, it'll be flooded. So that's kind of fun to think about. Species list. This is really something that I'm going to have to fill out as I'm there and as I observe more. Again, I haven't been there that much, especially in the summer. So one thing that is really nice to note, though, is in the trees and bushes, they already have cherry trees and they already have plum trees. So fruit trees are already there. They also have a bunch of nut trees, which is really nice. They have hazelnuts and walnuts already. So that's really great. We can build out from those. The important thing here is just, again, that the backyard has a gentle downslope. So keep that in mind. Edges and microclimates. This, again, is something that really I will get to know with the site, or I would get to know with the site as I live there. Some pretty clear ones, though, are the dark purpley bits. That's the wind. And so one thing to do would be to think about, how to build more hedgerows and windbreaks in those areas. Of course, also another big microclimate is the flood zone, that sort of turquoisey zone up there at the top of the map. Some nice things that happen in this site are that there's a microclimate, there's a fair amount of sun, especially around the house, that's protected with the hedges around the terrace and around the house. The sort of long green lines are meant to show you the hedges. So there's a lot of windbreak there that's already happening. And the cement and the sides of the house also collect a lot of sun or reflect suns. And also, as I mentioned before, the house does not block the sun. You can see the sort of sunny yellow blocks in the backyard, just near the house, off the terrace. And those are quite sunny. And because of that, because of realizing how warm it is right there, that's actually where I want to plant the gardens, is those nice yellowy squares in the backyard. So yay, permaculture. Analysis. So after I've done all the observation, we can take all that information and now start to analyze the site. So some of the things that I will do that I haven't mentioned already are, I'm going to build the gardens along contour lines. And the reason to do that is to help maintain, water flow, because we are, even though it's a gentle slope, it still is a slope, and we want to maintain the water and stop the runoff and keep the water as high as possible, and also to have it where we're going to use it, which is right behind the house. So build the garden rows and paths on contour. Another thing that we'll do is use the rainwater, which I already mentioned before. We'll use rainwater to put that into the garden directly, instead of having to pull it out of the well or using municipal water. So that'll involve changing a downspout and putting in a cistern, like a rain barrel, right behind the house. Another thing from the analysis that's important is, again, creating that community space in the backyard and encouraging people to come in. And that's really helpful, that gravel road where people walk and bicycle and sometimes drive, and they can see right over the back gate. They'll be able to see into the community space. They'll be able to see the garden and all the things that we build there. So it's already the space is set up to be welcoming. We just need to create the space for people to come into, because you can see into it quite easily, and there is foot traffic there. So that's a pretty exciting part. And also, of course, creating the structures, the compost toilet, as I said, and also to do like insect hotels and reptile lodges and things like that. And if we make them aesthetic and beautiful, people come and see them and they're like, oh, okay. And especially if they help build them and they get to use them, they'll see, how easy it is, and it'll encourage people to come and use ours, and also potentially to build their own. And of course, they can teach us how to build them even better. So awesome, really fun. We'll also do some community sharings, knowledge sharings in that space. So I plan to invite people in to do knowledge shares. So some of them may be paid, some of them may be completely free. So it's to invite people in to share knowledge with each other, and it'll also be, I can share knowledge with them. And also we'll do like seed swaps and different kinds of exchanges like that, plant swaps and different things in that community space in the backyard. Anything else in here? I think that's good. All right. So zones. Now here's something that was really fun to realize. And when before I looked at this space in a permaculture lens, and especially from the zone, as I was saying before, the zones really helped me understand why I didn't appreciate where their gardens were. So this map is a bit tilted just for ease of drawing. Again, the front yard is on the right side, and no one uses the front yard. Even in the summer, there's hardly any traffic in the front yard. And that's where they have the current garden beds. They're quite small. It's still like, I never felt, even as I was beginning to think about this house, I was not encouraged to use that. And I realized once I took the permaculture lens and started thinking about zones, is because everyone is attracted to the backyard, which is again on the left side of this slide. of this map, that's just where we want to be, because the backyard is beautiful and it's big and it looks out onto the river, and it's just a really nice space. And so I realized that, of course, zone 1 is the backyard, not the front yard. And it also has, as I said before, these really protected windbreaks all around it. And it's sunny all year, right just outside the terrace. Even in winter, it's sunny. The house does not shade the garden. So I want to put gardens right there in zone 1. And then zone 2 is, of course, just off that. And so that's where I'm going to move compost and do some different things, which we'll talk about a bit later. It's just that really thinking about this in terms of zones made it much more clear to me where to put things and why, again, that their lovely little garden in the front yard for me is zone 3. That's why it's not as attractive as putting it in the backyard. So there we go. Yay, permaculture. All right, components and connections. So really, I just talked about, I think, one of the biggest components and connections, why to put the garden in the backyard. And that is because really the emotional aesthetic beauty of this site is the backyard. And again, that's this whole upper section. And so that's where everything needs to go, to me. So, putting the gardens right there, which you can see on contours, these little lines right behind the house off the terrace. Putting a little cold frame in the back there could be a great idea. Putting a little compost very close to there. We won't have a lot of space to put a compost that close to the house, and we can still have one and then put a bigger compost a bit farther away, where it's still accessible, and yet we'll have a bit more room because it won't be so squished in zone 1 there. Also to put, again, a rain barrel right there. You can see just in the back of the house, right here where my cursor is kind of circling around, and we'll do that again to feed the garden. And so it's a really nice way to use the rainwater that's coming off of the roof. And as I said, one of the things I learned from this is that they're already funneling the rainwater down into the well, and you can see the well up there just to the north of the house. So they're already using their own rainwater. I just want to use it more directly. They use the well water some inside the house. They still use a fair amount of municipal water. So one of the things to do is think about how to use the gray water and get it back out, and how to use the well water and more than the municipal water. And that'll come with just using the house more and designing things like, using the rainwater for the garden, things like that. There's really a lot kind of packed right there into zone 1. Solar panels will be on the house when we get ready to do that, if that starts to make sense. And as we start spreading out into zone 2, we see there's a larger compost bin here. You can also see, moving from zone 1 into zone 2 and zone 3, there's this nice path that goes right out into the back gate down to the gravel road. And there's this nice blobby outdoor community gathering area. And you can see that's really close to the back gate, and also has a nice view right up into the garden. We'll put the compost toilet here, just up in the north there, about halfway between the house and the community area. And then eventually we'll also start building guilds around the trees and in the hedges. And I really, like, in my imagination, I so see that as beautifying the space. The space is already very green and has a lot of trees and hedges. It's just that it's kind of, in a way, kind of barren. And so when I see and the idea of the guilds, it really kind of makes it a bit wild and a bit, for me, more beautiful, and more natural. So I'm pretty excited about that, as well as, of course, providing habitat and food for insects and animals and all kinds of birds and fun critters that are going to come in. So that's another really nice way to connect, our own food use with the natural needs. And that will also spill out into, the surrounding areas, of course, because it'll feed our neighbors, the insects that come in from our neighbors' homes. And there's also crop fields in between this site and the Seine River. And so, anything that wants to come in from the fields, there's little rabbits that they don't generally come into this site. And I think this will help provide some space for them to come in. So I'm imagining that doing some things to make this site more inviting to, the natural habitat around, could create more of a natural habitat as far as the animals within it. So that's pretty exciting as well. So basically we've got just a lot of stuff packed in zone 1, and then slowly, it's moving out into the zone 2 and 3. Here's just a quick look at the water system. The top red arrow you can see up here, this is the downspout that I'm gonna divert and put a cistern down here, just to the back of the house. And then the bottom red arrow is where the gardens will be. And as you can see, there's kind of nothing there in the moment. So that'll be a nice place to put them, because as I said, it does get sunny all year right there. Okay, so let's look here at hedges and tree guilds. The one thing I want to say is that while I've done a bit of gardening, I've never done any kind of guilds for either hedges or trees. And it was really fun to realize that different kinds of trees need different kinds of guilds around them. And that's kind of obvious when we think about it. And yet I just want to share that with you, that if and when you do start creating guilds for different trees and hedges, to think about and research, what that particular tree or kind of hedge needs, especially if it's like a fruiting tree or nutting tree. Maybe it needs pollinators around it. Or of course, it's also going to have different pH needs and things like that. And so what you plant around it can really help support that tree or that hedge. So that's pretty fun thing to look at. I also realized that red currants, which is something I really like, grow natively in this region. So that's pretty fun. I would be planting lots of those and animals love them too. So. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we're going to do each year. Because I'm really new to gardening and doing a lot of these things, I realized I wanted to take it really slow. And so the first year is to plant out this garden here in the backyard just behind the house. And, I don't know if it's going to be quite this big. This is basically where it's going to be though. And that is on contour lines right there. And to create this small compost bin. And of course, in the first year, we're going to be doing a lot of observation of the site and seeing if the things that we think we want to do in the following years make sense. And of course, we'll start doing some community gathering things in the backyard as well. Year 2, we'll build the second compost bin a bit farther away. That's going to be in zone 2. We'll also play with the downspout and putting in the rain barrel there to start watering the garden. And of course, we'll probably start expanding the garden a bit, and it may look a bit more like this picture or not, we'll see. So in years 3 and 5, there's lots of things we could do. I imagine, as we live there, this image would completely change by the time we get to year 3. Still, it's pretty fun to imagine. So, solar panels, a cold frame, maybe even putting a water tower to store some of the well water, and doing some kind of passive pump to get the water from the well up into the water tower, so that when we want it, we can get it, easily get pressure from the water tower out into the garden or wherever we want water, even back into the home. Potentially. The compost toilets there, insect house and reptile lodge, those are there too. And also starting the tree guilds, the hedge guilds, and maybe doing another low maintenance garden there in the front where the existing raised beds are. Another thing that's not on this photo is gray water system, is also possible for this site. And that seems like a really nice thing to do. Again, the issue with this site is because it is in a small town, there's a lot of regulations that we need to look at. And I don't know those yet. So French administration, that will take some time to figure out. All right. Another thing to share here is that doing the interviews was really interesting, because though my husband and I have talked about this quite a bit, actually designing a site and sitting down and talking about it together when it was really on the ground looking at it, we realized, there's some things that were really important to him. Like, we wouldn't actually buy this site because it is really important to him to have a tennis court on the site. And there's nowhere that we could put it in this site because of the flood zone. And I mean, we basically have to have it like right where the garden's going to be, or we'd need to buy part of the neighbor's yard or something. I mean, so it was really helpful to see that even though the site is huge, it's just the shape is wrong for what we'd need. And, seeing where the flood zone is, it's just not even possible really in the site. So that was really helpful. And so I would say, before you buy an actual site, do your stakeholder interviews, at least with the people that are going to live on it, and make sure that everything everyone wants is actually possible on the site. Because that was kind of a shock to me, because the site is quite big. And yet, because of the shape of it and the flood zone, we wouldn't buy it. Just good to know. Okay. So one last thing that was really helpful to see and to think about was the time boundaries. We will both have we will keep our jobs to make money. So while this will reduce the need for income on some level, because we will be producing a lot of food and doing some knowledge share, and eventually probably making some money with the community classes and things, we'll still definitely need to keep our other jobs. And so the time boundaries around that, and really thinking about, maybe there's seasons where we spend more or less time on the garden and doing research for everything. And maybe the times when we'll be spending more. So it's really to think about that and maintain those boundaries, because those are important. And I think it would be really easy to spend too much or not enough time if we didn't get really clear about that. So that was really helpful to think about, how much money, time. I think money is kind of obvious. Time was not such a clear thing to think about before. So really helpful. So really the last thing I want to say about this course and this design is just how much gratitude I have for it, because I learned so many things, and a lot of it was I understood why I didn't really understand what permaculture was before this, and that's because largely it's design. It's not actually digging in the dirt and planting things. You're not learning gardening, you're learning design. And so great thing to do online, because there is a lot of theory involved. And I just, all the different things like zones and interviewing people, as I just said, and boundary setting and those things. I'm thinking about how to get the community involved and realizing how important that is for me. This course was really helpful, and also just the way that it was taught, with all the different women presenting their viewpoints and their ideas. It was really rich and very juicy, and I feel really like I know a lot more than I did before. And it was really a beautiful kind of holistic absorption of stuff. So lots of gratitude. And yeah, just want to say very happy I did this. And I feel like I learned a lot. All right. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much for watching this. And till next time. Enjoy permaculture.